I was going over some old exercises recently, and I think probably around 20 or so, I started using pieces as my main way of sort of keeping my technique good and basically turn my back on most etude books. I don't really count Paganini caprices as etudes, but I guess you technically could if you wanted to say those caprices are can be used as a study piece or a performance piece. So other than that exception, um, I used a lot of scale books and etude books up until around 20 years old or so. So almost a lifetime of playing violin until I turned my back on those exercises. And at that point, basically found some pretty neat passages in pieces that mimicked what I would find typically in an etude book. It wasn't always the case that you could sort of have a full mesh of your technique covered by a bunch of piece excerpts, but it was pretty good. So, and I guess to sort of strengthen my point, I was going through some Roland Vamos technique um, exercises today just to reminisce because I was rifling through some papers, and there's this um, double stop exercise that he sort of champions. And I don't want to go into the whole thing because it's a long exercise. But when the double stops are, so here's an example of. So that's like one of the easier exercises. But then he splits them up, so it's. And on and on. And you would do these slower. I'm just trying to get through them for you. But yeah, and you do that all over the instrument, different keys, different string combinations. And I think there's like seven times three, so 21 possible variations of a full set. So quite a few minutes of time would be dedicated to these exercises. And then, so I played one of these exercises, and it really reminded me of the beginning of the first Philip Glass violin concerto. And I was looking at it and I was thinking, all these exercises are actually in the exposition of the Philip Glass concerto. And even more so, I think the Philip Glass concerto opening has even a few more techniques like extensions and a few stretches based on the fingerings you choose. It's an option too. So on and on and on and on. And this just reminded me so much of this Roland Vamos exercise that I just thought I'd share, that you could, in theory, find pieces if you really don't want to be stuck playing etudes in order to keep your technique sort of fresh. You can find pieces that really tap into covering most of your technique, which is great. There's definitely an adage that I was told that you need to spend maybe 20% of your time on pieces. The rest of your time needs to be spent on technique and scales. And I've heard stories of Eugenie Zai, when he was, in his twilight years, he would just practice arpeggios and scales and things like that. Now that could be lore, that could be effect, but it's hard to say whether um, etudes and scales and all that are something that you just need to constantly spending most of your time doing. I submit that life is short. If you have pieces that you really enjoy, you probably could find some excerpts that mesh really well to your entire technique. And you could, instead of playing arpeggios and scales, you could play the first movement of the Beethoven concerto, which is very scalar. Lots of leading tones, so you get like the full um, 12 tones of most passages in the violin concerto. Yeah, lots of options for sure. So be creative with how you spend your life and how you spend your time. If you want to um, start with etudes as a beginner into an intermediate time in your learning process, that probably makes sense. But after that, I submit that you can use pieces the whole time to learn and keep up with your technique.